Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. This is part one of my year-end review, which I'm calling Looking Back 2018. And in this part one, it'll be best knockouts and biggest disappointments. I'll cover other things from the year in part two, and there might be a part three. It sort of depends on how I chunk it all out. Last year I did a 50-odd minute video that was, the whole kit and caboodle, but I decided I'll chunk it up this year. So we'll just focus on the two different things. We'll start with the best knockouts first. Often at the elite level, you don't see necessarily a lot of brutal and vicious KOs. Boxers, by the time they get to the top, especially at the elite level, you see more decisions. You don't see guys getting sparked out so much. But this year, we did see a number of guys with reputed chins, guys who've got a good set of whiskers, who did get knocked clean out, spark out. So I'll start with Deontay Wilder versus Luis Ortiz. No reason to start with this fight other than it was early in the year. It was one of the best knockouts from the early part of the year. So that was in early March. Luis Ortiz, Deontay Wilder, a much anticipated showdown. And that could have ended so differently. Ortiz almost knocked out Deontay Wilder. But Ortiz gassing later in the fight, Deontay Wilder sparks him out. So he dropped him 3 times in that fight, and the knockout blow, it was an uppercut, something you don't really see from Deontay Wilder that much, but he hurt Luis Ortiz in that fight multiple times. And Ortiz left on the canvas, on his knees. He was done, knocked out for the first time in his career. And prior to that fight, there'd been a number of people who were commenting, in comment sections, Luis Ortiz, best chin in the division, Luis Ortiz, he's never been down, all this sort of stuff. But Deontay Wilder proved Luis Ortiz is human. One, by dropping him in that 5th round. Ortiz was all over the place, saved by the bell in that instance. But later in the fight, clearly hurt, knocked out. Wasn't quite spark out, it wasn't unconscious out as my next knockout, which was Dillion White and Lucas Browne. That was a much anticipated fight. The build-up, especially on social media, had been quite bitter for months. There'd been a fight that had been bubbling up, Lucas Browne and Dillion White chatting a lot of shit to each other. And Lucas Browne, he came into this saying he was going to knock Dillion White out. In the end, he turned up out of shape, didn't really look as good as he could have, didn't come in the shape that he should have. He was 264.5 pounds. And Dillion White really made easy work of Lucas Browne. It wasn't really a competitive fight. But in I think it was the 6th round, Dillion White just landed an absolutely brutal left hook. And Lucas Browne was on the mat, almost lifeless, completely knocked out. One of the best knockouts of 2018. That was really vicious and ruthless. And Dillion White, he was involved in another ruthless knockout later in the year. That was just in December 2018. That was Derek Chisora. 11th round of that fight, just out of nowhere, boom, left hook lands, and Derek Chisora on the ground, out. And he was certainly hurt by that shot, came out against the run of play almost, and Derek Chisora, gone burger. There is no need for a trilogy fight there, and I hope they don't go for that down the line, because all interest that I had in that rivalry, it's been put to bed now. The next knockout that we're going to touch on, Alexander Povetkin getting sparked out by Anthony Joshua. Alexander Povetkin coming into this, much vaunted chin, sure he'd been down before, but had never been stopped as a professional, never been knocked out. And Anthony Joshua dealt to him, really wrecked him in the 7th round. And you got to say, that was a performance which Joshua needed, because there was some expectations about going back to his knockout ways, because against Joseph Parker he had been more measured, he hadn't fought as aggressively, he'd gone into there with a different game plan. But for Povetkin, he said, I want to get back to my knockout ways, I want to take him out. And that's what he did. After sort of navigating some early troubles with Alexander Povetkin's movement and his boxing, he was sharp, landed a few good shots. Joshua came and clipped him and took him out in a ruthless fashion. That really was a good knockout. Perhaps the one that sort of slipped under the radar for most boxing fans, and most of these knockouts here I've covered have been of guys at the upper end of the division. Robert Helenius and Okine. If you haven't seen that fight, it's well worth a watch. That was a couple of months ago now. Robert Helenius just absolutely destroyed Okine. It was late in the fight. It was a left hand, straight left, just absolutely sent him across the ring, and he was gone. It was really impressive. It was a brutal way to end the fight. It was a very fun fight. Erkan Tepa came out strong. He was swinging. Robert Helenius absorbed it, but eventually Tepa started slowing down. He's not on the juice now, and Helenius started to dominate a bit more and eventually just absolutely wrecked him. There was a lot of interest after the fight in that result because it was certainly a vicious knockout to behold. And now we're going to get into a few other knockouts, or nearly knockouts, or strange knockouts. There's a few different categories that I want to get to. Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury, that was the nearly knockout. For all money, Tyson Fury looked knocked out in the 12th round of their fight on December 1st. But, you know, somehow he came back from the dead. And some have said it's a long count, but it's not counting as a knockout. But certainly for all money, it was the nearly knockout. And that really would have been an exclamation point for Deontay Wilder. He was already celebrating that he'd knocked him out, but it wasn't to be. Moving on to the next category, most unexpected knockout. Dave Allen versus Nick Webb. Coming into that fight, Dave Allen was not expected to really make much noise against Nick Webb. Webb, an unbeaten prospect, he was a bit unknown, a bit unproven in terms of his ability, but he was expected by many of us to take care of Dave Allen, who'd kind of become a glorified punching bag. He'd just been dispatched by Tony Yoka the month before, beaten in the 10th round. It was a stoppage performance. Allen never went down, but he was battered in that fight. He comes back, he fights Nick Webb in late July, and out of nowhere, big looping overhand right, bang. Nick Webb is just completely all over the place. He's done. Done like a dog's dinner. He was out of there. And Dave Allen, who talked about retiring, comes back to revive his career with the most unexpected knockout of 2018, for me at least. And the next one, it's in a similar vein, but I'll call this against the run of play knockout. Derek Chisora versus Carlos Takam. Chisora, even though you wouldn't have known it from the Sky commentary, he was taking a beating versus Carlos Takam for several rounds, and then Derek Chisora unleashes on Takam, a right hand puts Takam down, and another right hand ends it. Carlos Takam out of there. And this last one that I'll cover before getting to the disappointments for the year, was it a knockout? Joyce versus Ivica Baccarin. This was a strange one. Because if you go back and watch that fight, and there's not much of it to watch, it was a first round knockout. Literally, it looks like Joyce ruffles Baccarin's, the feathers of his head, touches his hair, and he's down, acting all hurt, and all of a sudden, as soon as he's counted out, he's up on his feet looking okay. That was a strange one because, yeah, certainly it looked like a dive to me. It certainly didn't seem like a knockout, but ruled a knockout. And I think it speaks to, Joyce's reputation as a fearsome puncher. Baccarin didn't want any part of him. To the disappointments of the year. No undisputed fight. Doesn't matter what side you're on of this equation if you support Wilder or Joshua. We didn't get this fight in 2018. It was there to be had. Ultimately, it didn't happen, and we're still wondering, will it happen? No guarantees it'll ever happen. So certainly that was one of the biggest disappointments of 2018 for me. The next disappointment I want to cover for 2018, it's the unfulfilled potential of Jarrell Miller. This guy seemingly has so much talent. For a guy who's 300 plus pounds, moves the way he does, with his unrelenting pressure, what's he doing with his career? Where is he honestly going? Because he kind of treaded water in 2018 and really didn't do much. He was spinning his wheels, talking a lot of nonsense, but didn't really do much. For all the talk of Miller being the most active heavyweight in the division, he only fought 3 times, and it was against opponents no one wanted to see him in with. Johan Dorper, that was in April. It was a 12-round fight. Dorper showed up for 6 rounds and after that took a battering for the remainder of the fight. Miller gets a comfortable decision. Thomas Adamek in October. It was a fight no one was calling for, no one wanted. Everyone wanted Miller in the Pulev fight, but Pulev ducked Bulgaria. That's what he said. He didn't duck Pulev, he ducked Bulgaria. So Adamek, he gets, taken out in 2 rounds. No surprise. It was really a case of how long would he last, not whether he would beat him. But I'd hilariously note there was someone who said they put $300 down on Adamek, and that was in one of the comment sections. So, I feel for that guy because that was just, burning the money in all actuality. And then also we had Bogdan Dinu. That was in November. That was another case of an unheralded guy in Dinu, a guy who'd been barely active in the past couple of years. First fight of 2018. No one wanted the fight. No one was calling for it. They have it in Kansas of all places. Couldn't sell out the arena. And Miller stops him in 4 rounds. Dinu, a bit soft to the body, didn't like it, goes down. And yeah, I just think Jarrell Miller should be fighting guys that are on his level or somewhere closer to it, because Adamek, you know, that wasn't a fight anyone wanted to see. If Dinu had have been active, had have been beating some guys and deserved the shot with Miller, well then I wouldn't have had any issue with that fight. But the fact is, you know, we had no idea how good he was, and he showed a bit in the, you know, it was some boxing ability in the first couple of rounds, but ultimately he folded relatively easily. It was no surprise that Miller beat him comfortably in the end. And also, Johann Dorper, he put up an effort, but that wasn't the fight fans were calling for, because Miller had been in those similar fights in 2017. You had the Marius Wack fight and the Gerald Washington fight. Dorper, a fading European former title contender, it was more of the same that Jarrell Miller had just fought. Where is the step up? He's eking his way to a title. Massive disappointment for me, because who knows how good this guy could be. There's a lot of potential there, but he's protecting that O with his life. Another disappointment, people do not know how to spell Dominic Brazils' name. This is a bit more of a light-hearted one, but Brazil must have the hardest name in boxing to spell. And without checking it, please write it in the comment section how you think it is spelled. Honestly, I must have seen about 15 different iterations of the spelling of his last name in 2018. And Brazil, you know, as in the country, that would be one of the most common spellings of his name, and it's actually way different to that. But if you think you can spell it without having to look it up, please do so. And rabid fanboys. With the emergence of Deontay Wilder in 2018, him stepping into fights that people wanted to see him in, he's had a rise in fanboys. The re-emergence of Tyson Fury, his fans have been back to the fore, and then also you've got Anthony Joshua's fanboys as well. The coalescing of the 3 groups is not a good situation for a comment section. It led me to abandoning whole comment sections entirely, because it just gets so toxic. People are just, it's beyond passion. It's just, some of it is just straight out delusion, you know, narratives to suit their own selves. There's no objectivity. It just gets so boring, so tiresome. But, you know, obviously that's part of the YouTube mix. It's, you know, what I signed up for. It's what, you know, you have to put up with when you're reading or commenting as well. And I know, you know, some of the sort of back and forth from fanboys certainly does put people off commenting. But it would be good to see more restraint in these sorts of things, because it's meant to be the comment section. I like to have it as a place where everyone can come and comment, say their piece, you know, not get attacked and called a fanboy, or, you know, you're being biased because you have a different view. People are allowed a different opinion. You know, you don't have to try to convince me of your opinion. I'm happy for you to say it, but, you know, don't be abusive in the process of making a comment. Everyone can have their opinion, can say their piece. I just wish some of the stuff from the fanboys would be dialed back a notch, because after all, we're here for the same thing. We're here for boxing. We're here to talk boxing. And, you know, everyone wants to have a discussion. But, you know, some of the stuff is, you know, it's a bit heinous and very tiresome. But yeah, 2018, best knockouts. If you haven't seen the Tepper and Robert Helenius fight, I'd recommend that as a watch over the sort of Christmas and New Year's period. Certainly a good fight to watch in terms of action, and the knockouts, spectacular. But the other knockouts, you know, we had Wilder, Joshua, White. They were all involved in some very good fights, some very good endings to those fights. And yeah, certainly biggest disappointment, no undisputed fight, no Jarrell Miller step-ups, rabid fanboys, and who knows how the hell to spell Dominic Brazils' name. What do you make of it all? Drop a comment, loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.